Is Nightreign still good? I made a video a while ago saying that Nightreign was complete slop, and I was completely wrong. Now, after nearly 2,000 hours playing it, I genuinely think Nightreign might be one of the best, most fun games FromSoftware has ever made. But there's also a huge problem with it, and it's probably the reason why a lot of people have already stopped playing. So the real question is Nightreign still good? Now, it does feel as though FromSoftware might actually be done with Nightreign. I'm hoping I'm completely wrong about that, but with the lack of communication from them lately, I genuinely think the last big update we got might have been the final piece of content. There might be a balancing patch that happens at some point, but I don't think we're going to see the Shadow of the Erdtree weapons, new bosses, or even the map updates going forward. Luckily, PC players are covered in that department. The modding community, like always, has stepped in to address the issues developers left behind, and that's been happening since Dark Souls days. But back to the question, is Nightreign still good? Well, it's a tough one. The answer is yes, and the answer is no. Some of you might remember a video I made a while ago where I basically went all in saying Nightreign was slop, and boy was I wrong. Elden Ring Nightreign sucks. I'm sorry, but it does. Now, before you all jump down my throat, in fact, in my opinion, let me repeat, in my opinion, Nightreign actually might be more fun than Elden Ring. But that's a discussion for another topic, which I'll go into at some point. The video is actually half finished, but I would love to hear your thoughts. So when I finish the video, I can maybe add a few of them in, and discuss some of them. So let me know your thoughts on that topic. So why is Nightreign still fun? Well, the core gameplay loop is fantastic. You drop into a world, use your brain to piece together a build for whatever you find, fight challenging bosses, you end up losing a shit ton of levels in the storm because, Magma Worm is 3 runes. You won't give up on that particular boss. You somehow get to the Night Lord at level 11. You clutch it, you beat the Night Lord, hugs and kisses, victory screen. What's not to love about that? I genuinely feel sorry for the people who never gave Nightreign a chance, because I don't think we've ever had this much fun with a game that started out as, this is probably going to be Fortnite-esque slop, and it somehow turned into, if I don't play Nightreign today, I might actually die. Yes, it is that deep. Even the DLC, which I know some people would disagree with me on this, it's one of the best DLCs FromSoftware has ever made. The depth of the map alone is incredible. The Great Holiday routes that can make you insanely overpowered, obviously depending on how you approach them. Then you've got the bosses and the lore and the way the community ends up theorizing about what's going on, what's going to happen next. And Greg, in my opinion, is one of the greatest bosses FromSoftware has ever created. Both mechanically and cinematically, he's fantastic. I genuinely think he's up there with the best. Consort Radahn level, one would say. But, of course, there's always a but. Nightreign is also bad. Now, fundamentally, the game itself is actually fine. Like, most of the problems people have with Nightreign aren't issues. They're just not issues at all. Yeah, levers are annoying. People disconnecting at the character screen because they're scared of losing a few hundred elo. It's frustrating, and personally, I think those players are the softest skeletons walking on the earth. But the simple solution is block them, and you never see them again. Right? Problem solved. Personally, I think if you disconnect, you should have to wait till the expedition you disconnected from has finished before being able to queue again. Or maybe just, add a flat 35-minute timer to them so they can't join another expedition. That might hurt the player base, the life cycle of the game itself, but I personally would prefer that to happen. Then, of course, there are griefers. Being stuck on a run with someone who has been trolling for 35 minutes is rough, especially when that's basically the length of an expedition. But again, once the run finishes, you block them, you move on, problem solved. The expeditions themselves, they don't have any fundamental flaws. I don't want to call them perfect, but they're as perfect as you're going to get for an RNG expedition. Now, I know a lot of people complain about the RNG, but honestly, the expedition RNG is mostly fine. I think a lot of players just don't fully understand how many of the passives worked. I've actually made a video explaining a lot of them, some of the important ones a while back, so you can check that one out here. But I think the real issue is that most people are generally scared to try something new because they don't want to be a liability to the team. Personally, I would much prefer you to be underpowered but trying something new than forcing yourself to run the same slot balancer build over and over and over and over and over again. Which brings me to another point. Balancer relics aren't bad, but they are bad for the quality of the game. Think back to your first playthrough of Elden Ring. You got to a certain point, you found the Rivers of Blood, you found the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, you found the White Mass. Suddenly you're spamming L2 all the way through your game while your Mimic tier is also doing the same thing whilst taking aggro. And that was fine, right? Like, you had fun, you felt the joy of winning, you got all the achievements, and you sat on the Elden Throne whilst your Mimic tier was side-eyeing you because, well, they did majority of the work. It was fun. Now, you're on your 7th playthrough. You're not doing that anymore because you know it trivializes the experience. Balancer relics are basically the same thing, but the closest thing that Nightreign has to an easy mode. Obviously there are definitely some builds in them, and I don't think the balancer relics generally are bad, it's some of the setups that come with them, but they do make the encounters far easier than they should be, which leads nicely into another problem. The relic system itself is honestly terrible. I don't think players should be able to create their own relics because that would just turn the game into another balancer meta slop simulator, but the system definitely needs improvements. Maybe allowing like a reroll on the relic reward screen after defeating the Night Lord, or maybe allowing players to edit like base relics, you know, the character skill one, so at least you could put like a Night Invader relic on with a specific character skill, or just allowing each Nightfarer to have one template relic, so one, you know, free relic slots where you could put anything you want on, whether it's a deep relic or whether it's a base relic. There are obviously a million different ways you could improve the relic system, because I understand it, a lot of players are annoyed because the grind is brutal. You know, some people will say they've played for 400 hours and still don't have good relics. Well, buddy pal, I've played for 2,000 hours and I probably have 10 genuinely god rolls. That should tell you everything you need to know. Now, of course, there are other criticisms that I could make. Lack of content is obviously one of them. Personally, I think the amount of content we got for around $50 is fair, but I understand why others might disagree. Would I like more content? Of course, but calling the current content bad, that would be me being dishonest. For me, 2,000 hours of gameplay, I think that's incredible value. And honestly, I still want to play Nightreign every day. Now, for a bit of Copium, I would absolutely love to see one more DLC. One more big push for the game, because if FromSoftware leave Nightreign as it is, I genuinely think it will go down as one of their biggest missed opportunities. I'd happily pay for another expansion. Obviously, I'd love to see the Shadow of the Erdtree weapons added. I'm lucky enough to, you know, have played them through mods on PC, but I do genuinely hope the console players get to experience it too, because it is very fun. Another thing I would like them to add is allowing people to choose their depth in the Deep of Night. Like once you hit depth 5 or maybe hit max 999, you should have the ability to pick your depth. I still think your points should go towards your score. Like for example, if you were like 6,000 elo depth 5 but playing in depth 3, if you lose 200 points, you should now be at like 5,800, which would push you back down to depth 4. So you could no longer play in depth 5, only depth 4 and below, if that makes sense. I still would like maybe another depth, or like, you know, like a hard mode or an extreme mode to be added, like no relics or something. So when you're playing that depth, essentially it's just going to be brutal for the gamers that are in depth 5 and finding it too easy, because now when you play with a good team in depth 5, it genuinely feels like you're playing depth 1. It's that easy. So something along those lines. Obviously some of that might be a bit too drastic, I might be just, you know, yapping nonsense, but something along those lines would be very fun, I think. Now of course, overall it probably sounds like I'm being negative towards Nightreign. I'm truly not. I think Nightreign is one of FromSoftware's greatest games ever made. It's up there for the most fun, and I think like every FromSoftware game, it has its flaws, and these flaws could be addressed to make it better. So gamers, I would love to hear your thoughts on the matter. How many of you are still playing daily? Also, if you haven't done it already, I really appreciate it if you would drop a sub. Trying to hit that 5k milestone. I thought I'd be there by now, but hey ho, I clearly haven't made content good enough for most of you to hand it over. That thing, your sub. Cheesy shit out of the way. I appreciate you all being here, and you know, I appreciate you all that watch on a regular basis. As always gamers, stay safe, big love, peace.